If your teen or young adult melts down before tests, doubts themselves, even when you know they're capable, sounds unsure when they talk, you're going to love this conversation. Jennifer Gershberg is a former University of Maryland professor, and now she supports students in building real skills that build real confidence, executive functioning, studying, communication, and handling discomfort instead of avoiding it. We get into test anxiety, imposter syndrome, confident communication, with a connection, of course, to career competence as you successfully chart the course to launch your young person into adulthood. She has a passion for this work, rooted in being tough yet empathetic with a can-do attitude. Let's jump into a great conversation. Jennifer Gershberg, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I love this topic because I know, you're coming at this from the heart of a mom, professor, just somebody who wants students to do well. I know you say you have a deep concern and commitment for student well-being. And you know that a big part of that happens to be supporting them and their, fundamental skills that they need to be successful. I always say to get them to launch into adulthood. That's what we were raising these kids for, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you see when you say teaching kids to have those fundamental adulting skills, to be like successful academically, professionally, even really personally, I would guess. What are those key skills that you see them needing?
There are a number of skills that I think students need to continually work on growing. So some are in the academic realm, study skills, time management, things of that nature, critical thinking. And then there are sort of for lack of a better word, softer skills that are every bit as important, if not more important.
Yeah.
And these are things like communication skills, interpersonal skills, ways of interacting with different types of people. And developing all of these skills really leads to authentic confidence. So that is the ultimate goal, that students will graduate from college and go out in the world and be able to rely on themselves to sort of weather the storms that life will throw at them.
Yeah, to have that grit. I know Adam Grant calls them human skills. I've heard him call them, and very fitting too. Because as a mom, I never sat here and thought like, oh, I want them to come back and stay here well into their 20s. Sometimes I think kids think we want them to, right? And they're like, oh, they won't get off my back, or my mom's sad about me growing up. I'm like, no, I really do want you to be successful. I love you and I'll miss this phase of life, but no, that's ultimately what our goal is, right?
Right. To launch successful, confident, competent adults.
What we see with we serve 15 to 25-year-olds with this career confidence framework that we have. So I use the word confidence as well. And what I find with the 20 somethings that come into our ecosystem or their parents are telling me is it really is confidence. Like it keeps them stuck from moving forward. And so they get stuck in that freeze mode, right?
Yes.
So when you name those skills that we're trying to build, how do we begin to develop them? What are the ways? Because this is rooted in, you were a professor at the University of Maryland teaching business law and business ethics, right?
Yes.
And so what did you begin to see that made you say, like, I'm not even going to teach anymore. I'm going to double down on supporting kids in this area?
That's a great question. What I saw was a fundamental decline in skills among students in all of the types of skills I identified before. And
Mm-hmm.
I noticed this particularly post-pandemic, but I'm not blaming COVID for all of it. I think that's
Right.
one of many factors, and there are a lot of culprits here. But it is a fairly universal problem now that students tend to have more distractions. They have less focus. They are less tolerant of ambiguity academically. They are not as adept at studying and managing their time, or communication and professionalism. So I saw this decline among students for a couple of years post-pandemic, and it concerned me enough to decide to resign, even though I loved my job. Fortunately for me, I have a great relationship with the University of Maryland, and they've hired
Right.
me back to give talks. So that's nice. I can
Okay. There were
stay
no bridges burnt
just,
as
yeah,
you went out. Just
out
a
of sight.
calling and a greater purpose.
Exactly. So I say I'm out of sight, but not out of mind.
Right.
I still come back, but I wanted to be able to have an impact on students everywhere and not just in my classroom. So now
Mm.
I'm a campus speaker and I have a course and we can get into all of that. But my whole mission is to really help students develop these skills and, as a byproduct, more confidence.
Well, when you said the piece, well, two things that you said that came to mind. So I love that you said, I'm not going to blame COVID. Like, it's a factor, but I agree with you because I think as soon as we blame COVID, it's like, oh, can't do anything about it, right?
Right.
It's
That's
COVID.
right.
Do you know there's a psychologist and an author, Dr. Meg Jay. It was one of my favorite books that I read last year, and it's called The 20 Something Treatment. And she asserts that the 20s have always been the hardest decade. It is not, we can't blame COVID. It's, yes, that impacted it, but we could go back to, I was in my 20s in the 80s and early 90s. It was hard back then. It's
Yes.
just a defining decade and it's going to be hard, right? It takes grit and resilience. So, first of all, totally agree with what you said about like we can't because we if we blame COVID, we tap out, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you said about ambiguity and it was impacting like so you saw it as a professor with like the academic thinking, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So, I see people uncomfortable with ambiguity when it comes to decision making around like careers or next steps or teens even choosing a college.
Yes.
They want confidence, but they have to tackle the ambiguity and they just don't have the ability to tackle it. That's what I've seen on both sides
It's
of the coin.
absolutely. And there's this discomfort with not arriving at a very clear answer when often
Right.
the answer is it can go many different ways and you have to pick and make a decision and sort of reason through it and arrive at a decision that is a
Yeah.
viable one.
We give the Berkman personality assessment to all of the students that are in our Launch Career Clarity course. And
Mhm.
some people are wired for ambiguity and can handle it well, and some people aren't. But life has a lot of ambiguity. So even if you're
Yes,
not wired to naturally embrace it, we've got to be able to teach that. So,
that's
how
right.
do we do that? Like, that's part of
Yeah.
what you dig into, right?
Yes, I mean, we do it by teaching skills. So when I think about confidence, confidence is defined as the feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something. It's
Mm,
a firm trust. So if we look at what self-confidence means, it's ultimately knowing that we can rely on ourselves to get through whatever challenge lies before us. And in order to do that, we need skills. We need competence. It is not just sort of an empty swagger. That is not what real confidence is about. It's
right.
really about building up our skill set so that we can tackle whatever the challenge of the day is, because it's always something.
So, for parents who are listening, and we also have educators that are listening that are supporting young people in figuring out all the things and being successful academically, where do they start? Like, what can they do?
So there are a number of different domains that they can think about. So one of the big areas is test anxiety. I hear this all the time from parents and from students who are blaming poor academic performance on test anxiety. So that's one area that I think merits some discussion.
Absolutely.
Test anxiety is super common. But if we think back to the definition of confidence that I
Yeah.
provided earlier, this belief in ourselves, it becomes clear that we can overcome test anxiety largely by the right preparation. The problem is students by and large, do not have great study methods. And I don't care if in high school they are getting all A's. We all know there is rampant grade inflation in high schools. And often what happens is straight A students from high school get into college and they have a very rude awakening when they get their first graded assignments back or tests back because they've sort of overestimated their academic prowess and skills. So I always say we need to start with the right study skills, whether no matter what your grades are in high school, there are adjustments that need to be made going into
Well, I was going to interrupt you just real quick to say, like, I've always asserted that at some point you hit that load, that cognitive load where academics just become hard. Some kids, it's ninth grade, right?
Mhm.
But if you breezed all the way through high school, which there's a lot of smart kids that do,
Yes,
they are going to hit that once they get to college, and then they're going to flounder if they don't already have those skills.
exactly right. They haven't had to build up the skills.
I love that you're talking through this, like not just the executive functioning study habits, but also the overcoming test anxiety, because you don't have a dog in that fight. It's not like you have I years ago I owned a test prep company. It's not like you have any benefit for students being able to test better
No.
or any of that. Like you're probably agnostic to ACT or SAT, right? But it's real that they've got to figure out the test anxiety piece.
It is, and it's standardized tests and it's college exams. It's tests post grad, depending on their careers,
Well,
whatever.
yeah, I was going to say, let me layer in. I had a guest, John Rice. I don't know if he's still at the University of San Francisco, but he was at the time. And we have an episode in the first year of the podcast. I'll drop the link in the show notes, but it was about nursing school admissions, highly competitive. And he made the point that if you have to apply to college, test optional, you have absolutely no business going into nursing because it is so testing heavy. And then we can extrapolate that out. And we talk about this with the young people in our course. Like if you're going to have to take an exam to get licensed, you better be a good test taker. Like, wouldn't it be terrible to do all of the academic work and then not be able to pass the licensing exam?
It would be awful.
Yeah.
So good
So
point.
you would say by working on the study habits, the study
Yeah.
skills, that's going to naturally impact test anxiety.
It does. It does. Because when you go into a test, having fully mastered the material, much of the test anxiety goes away. I'm not talking about getting rid of the normal, like pre-test jitters that
I
everyone,
hope I get an A.
that's
Yeah.
just part of life. But I'm talking about the crippling, paralyzing test anxiety that people blame for their poor performance. And that is super common. And once you get a handle on your both the substantive material you've studied, but also some test taking skills, and that you know how to approach different types of questions, so much of the anxiety naturally dissipates. So
Right. Because
I
they've
think
got the confidence.
exactly. So
Okay. So you start with this, like, we've got to be academically successful.
yes,
And that's going to result in testing success, which I would say there's a real career piece there.
correct.
Then where do we shift our attention once we've kind of tackled that?
So once
Would you say that one needs to be first?
I would say, chronologically, it sort of has to be first because testing affects high school kids, college kids,
Stages.
everyone, right? Generally take more tests the younger you are. So
But wouldn't you say the older you are, you take fewer tests, but the tests are higher stakes because
very
they're
much
more
higher stakes.
cumulative, they're
Yes.
bigger,
But
longer.
hopefully you will have developed the skills before then
Yep.
to handle those
Yeah.
tests. And you've developed some more maturity and wherewithal as well, which
Yep.
is to help. But I definitely think most students don't study the most effective, efficient ways. So I focus a lot on that. Once we've handled the academic piece, I would talk about communication. I think that is a huge area of growth for students, I would say. And COVID is somewhat to blame for this, and so is social media, because students mistake social media connection for real connection and social media engagement with real conversations, and they are just totally different. So I think communication skills across the board have declined to a concerning degree, but there are certain communication skills that parents can help their kids with to help their kids communicate with confidence. So that's another big area. And one of those things is, first of all, to know your strengths and to keep them. So, what is common is for very warm, empathic people to somehow reduce themselves in
Mm.
keeping with their warmth and kindness. So I always say, no, like the goal is to stay kind, stay connected, keep your empathy, but don't reduce yourself in the process. And there are very specific ways that parents can help their children not reduce themselves while maintaining those strengths.
Gosh, I love that. I saw when I was preparing for our time together, I saw that a student once said about you that you were nurturing but tough, exactly what students need. But
Well,
I feel like that embodies what you just said, right? Like you can still be warm,
yes, and
but you
connecting,
but you didn't reduce yourself.
right.
And I feel like that embodies it. So you're demonstrating that. So how would a parent at home, and I do love that you're also talking about what we can do at home because so many times we're outsourcing to the high school, to systems, to the college, the parenting, and they need us as parents.
They do, for sure. There's so much that we really can't outsource.
Yeah.
And so there are specific things we can work with our kids. So, first of all, there are certain communication patterns that tend to be disempowering. So, to be
Mm.
aware of these patterns is really helpful moving through it and moving forward to sort of not fall into these traps. So, for example, it's good to use hand gestures when you talk because it signifies that you're not afraid to take up space. So
I
that's
talk with my hands too much.
I know I do too. Maybe I'm overly confident.
I know. I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, oh, I'm a big hand talker. Like, I
Just
can't.
reframe it. It's a good thing. It makes
Okay. I
confidence.
need that because I actually
Yes,
do criticize myself
we
for it.
all do. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just reframe it because truly it means you're not afraid to take up space. You're not afraid to be expressive, and
Mm.
that exudes confidence.
I've never thought of it that way. Thank you,
Yep.
Jennifer.
Anytime. Also, and we all have the filler words that we use. I do too, but it's helpful to be mindful to try to reduce them. So these are words like, slowing down when we talk will help us reduce those filler words. So that's another thing we can point out lovingly to our kids that it can be helpful in not reducing their own power when they speak. Also, it's really important, and I learned this in law school, make your main point and move through it, move on, no rambling. Making your point clearly and boldly, and then moving on when you're done is a very confident way to speak.
So I have a question on that. So what I'm hearing there is be concise.
Yes.
And sometimes when I talk about like interviewing for internships or jobs or college admissions, the other end of that is like one word and then no context, right? Is there do kids tend to talk too much, too many words, or do they tend to be too flat and concise?
So that's a really, really good question because you want to strike the right balance.
Right.
When I say make your main point, I don't mean a one word response. A main point should include, your conclusion and your supporting evidence because that
Yep.
is your point. But you don't want to sort of be afraid of a silent second or two.
Right.
You don't want to be afraid of saying your piece and then being done, but you certainly want to be
Yeah.
comprehensive
I'm
in.
glad you clarified that because I could see listeners kind of deviating too far.
Right. You don't want to do that
Right.
for sure. I'm glad you asked that. Also, it's just important in general for students and for parents to encourage their students to do things they're afraid to do. And this sort of
This is a hard one for this is probably the biggest, at least with the career coaching that we're doing inside Launch Career Clarity. I think this is the biggest one for that I see.
yes. So what we need to, and this really gets into imposter syndrome, which is a very
Yep.
common phenomenon, but we have to repeat to our children constantly until they believe it. Being fearless is a myth. Like fearlessness does not
Say
exist.
that again, right?
It's not a thing. And too often people, particularly women, but I don't want to overgeneralize, but it is more common among women. Too often they give away opportunities that they would be great for because they're afraid. And, they're afraid to make others mad or they're afraid they're not good enough. They have imposter syndrome. But being visible and stepping outside of your comfort zone is so important. And when you've built up your skills to back you up, there's no reason not to do it. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to sort of talk about imposter syndrome
I think we have to normalize it. And
and normalize it.
we try to sometimes, I think, as the adult in the relationship in the room, whether it's we're a student we're working with or our own children, we want to look like we have it together and we have the answers. And I actually think that undermines overcoming this because I can say at 57 years old, I am still at times going like, would they really want me? Or should I ask that guest to be on the podcast? Or right? And to normalize it, no matter how old we are, we're going to have some of that.
Absolutely. And you want to think about comfort and growth, and they're not totally compatible with each other.
Yeah.
The goal is to grow and push yourself, and that is truly how growth and development occur. So I agree. I mean, normalizing imposter syndrome is very important. It's actually highest among high achieving people, and
Mm.
that's something else parents can point out to their children. If you're feeling it, it's another reframe. It means you're high achieving. It means keep doing it. You're doing something right. So
I
tell
tell people that their goals are not big enough if they're not a little scared. Like we
yeah,
don't want to be delusional. If I said I want to be a NASA, astronaut, like that's not going to happen.
because you need the skills to back it up.
Oh,
That's where the
perfect.
skills
Thank you.
apply, right? That's how we know whether we're delusional or
That's
not.
right. And I don't even like we talk a lot about we've got to build deep self-awareness before
Yeah,
we can even begin to connect to career awareness and what's out there and what might fit.
that's right.
So going back to like I can't be an astronaut, which we can all chuckle at that. It's not only that I don't have the skills to back it up, I love that reframing. But when I'm really honest with myself, I would never be able to accomplish it. I have a cognitive load in those scientific areas that I hit the ceiling, and that's okay
Yep.
because my cognitive ceiling on other things is very high, and that's
That's
where I should go.
that's exactly right. And it's about knowing yourself and knowing your
Yep.
strengths and knowing your interests and,
Being
using
realistic.
those as guides. Exactly. But it's really important, I think, to remind ourselves and our children that feelings are not facts.
Ah,
And just because we feel a certain way does not mean it's based in reality. And also just reiterating to your kids that not only is it normal to experience imposter syndrome, but actually new experiences are supposed to feel uncomfortable. They're supposed
yes.
to feel hard and weird and just different because this is literally how growth occurs. So normalizing the feeling of discomfort, I think is very helpful. And, this applies when your kids start college and they don't know what end is up because they're in a brand new place and feeling uncomfortable, or they're feeling overwhelmed in an internship or, in their first full-time job. Whatever that new challenge is, just reminding your kids as often as needed and as frequently as they will listen, that it is normal to feel this way. And, just because the experience is new.
You just said something, and I do have to give a shout out to your course that you have, your Welcome to College, boot camp for incoming students. Because here's what I found. This is fantastic information for what we can do as parents. And I mean, Jennifer, you've given me things that I still will still be helpful to me with, my kids are all in their 20s. I'm an empty nester. I'm on the other side of what most of our listeners are doing in the stage of life that they're out right now. But often, when it's that more challenging feedback or that difficult feedback, they hear it better from somebody else.
Yes,
And so the number of times I have a parent say to me like, I've said that, but you said it in that Q&A, that
yep,
live Q&A you had, and it landed differently.
that's right.
And that's why I feel like what you have, your framework and how you teach this is so good that
You.
I just have to give a shout out for your course. And I know it's really designed to, let's go be successful freshman year. I mean, freshman year of college is hard,
It's
right? It's not
the
just academically. Like you got all this freedom, you got to learn how to manage yourself better. Hopefully you already have some of those skills. So is your course, would you say only incoming freshmen or freshmen should take it? What's the
no.
age groups?
So I've been told I've had students in the beginning of high school take it, and I've had seniors in college take it, and all honestly have found it helpful. They
Yeah,
were,
I mean I've seen the
uh,
inside of it and
yeah.
I'm sitting there going like, "Oh, so many people need this." And I know some adults that could use it too.
Yeah, I mean, there are some definitely a lot of the advice in there can be generalized to other people and other situations as well. But when I created it, I had new freshmen just in my mind, which
Yeah.
is
Well, because you're a college professor, it was your
right.
world, right?
And I really tried to focus in the course on the areas that I know are basically universal struggles among college students because I wanted them to start out really strong and just miles ahead. It just gives them more skills and confidence, which is
Well, I'd
really,
imagine if somebody's, high school junior or senior have accomplished and tackled all of that, like they're going to
yes.
start out having a much better freshman
I
year.
have a lot of high school students take the course as well. And I think it's helpful. The earlier, the better.
I love it. Well, Jennifer's got a special link for us, flourishcoachingco.com/incoming. So if anybody wants to check that out, I can speak to it. It looks fantastic. I mean, I haven't done every single lesson in it, but you hit all the things that I know that this age group needs for sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, this has been so helpful. I mean, I'm in my empty nest life. I'm like, you've reframed some things for me professionally, for interacting with my own 20 somethings. And I just so appreciate you taking the time to be here.
It was a privilege to be here. So thank you for having me. I loved it.